You've done it again. Different face, different name, but somehow you're sitting across from the same person who dismisses your feelings, expects you to carry all the emotional labor, and leaves you questioning your own reality. You tell yourself this time will be different, that you've learned from your mistakes, that you can spot the red flags now. But here's the thing everyone gets wrong about toxic relationship patterns. You're not attracting these people because you're unlucky, naive, or have poor judgment. You're not a magnet for dysfunction because something is fundamentally wrong with you. Yet the real reason you keep finding yourself in the same painful dynamics has nothing to do with the other person at all. It's because you're unconsciously seeking out relationships that feel familiar, even when familiar feels terrible. Your psyche is trying to heal an old wound by recreating the exact conditions that created it in the first place. You're not choosing these people. You're choosing the feeling they give you, because that feeling, as painful as it is, feels like home. Alfred Adler understood something profound about human behavior. We don't repeat patterns because we enjoy suffering. We repeat them because they serve an unconscious psychological purpose rooted in our earliest experiences of power, belonging, and self-worth. Your attraction to toxic people begins with what Adler called your family constellation. The specific role you occupied in your childhood, system, and how that role shaped your understanding of relationships. Perhaps you were the peacekeeper who learned that love meant absorbing others' chaos. Maybe you were the caretaker who discovered that your worth depended on rescuing people who could or would uncare for themselves. Or you might have been the scapegoat who internalized the belief that you deserved mistreatment. These early roles become what Adler termed your lifestyle. A consistent pattern of behavior and expectation that you carry into every relationship. Your lifestyle isn't conscious. It's the emotional blueprint you developed to make sense of love, safety, and your place in the world. Here's where it gets psychologically complex. Toxic relationships feel familiar not because they're healthy, but because they activate the same emotional dynamics you learned to navigate as a child. When someone treats you poorly, dismisses your needs, or creates chaos, it triggers your original coping mechanisms. Suddenly, you're back in your childhood role, using strategies that once helped you survive. Adler called this private logic, the internal belief system that governs your emotional responses. Often in direct contradiction to what you consciously know is good for you. Your private logic might sound like, if I can just love them enough, they'll change. My worth is proven by how much I can endure. Conflict means abandonment, so I must avoid it at all costs. I don't deserve better than this. This private logic was formed during what Adler considered your most vulnerable years, when you were completely dependent on others for survival. If your caregivers were emotionally unavailable, unpredictable, or demanding, you learned to adapt your entire sense of self around their limitations. You developed what Adler called social interest, but in a distorted form that prioritized others' emotional states over your own well-being. The tragedy is that these adaptations, which were brilliant survival strategies in childhood, become invisible chains in adulthood. You're unconsciously drawn to people who recreate the emotional environment you learned to navigate, even when that environment was harmful. This is compounded by what Adler identified as the inferiority complex, not just feeling less than others, but carrying a deep conviction that you're fundamentally flawed or unworthy. When someone treats you poorly, instead of recognizing their behavior as unacceptable, you interpret it through the lens of your perceived inadequacy. Their toxicity becomes evidence of your unworthiness, rather than evidence of their inability to love properly. Your superiority complex then kicks in as compensation. The unconscious belief that you can succeed where others have failed, that your love is powerful enough to heal someone else's wounds, that you're uniquely equipped to handle what others cannot. This isn't arrogance, it's a desperate attempt to feel significant in the face of deep-seated feelings of inferiority. Adler emphasized that all behavior is goal-directed, even when we're unaware of the goal. Your unconscious goal in toxic relationships isn't to suffer, it's to finally win the love that was withheld in childhood. You're trying to prove that you're worthy of care by successfully loving someone who seems incapable of loving you back. It's an impossible task, but your psyche keeps believing that this time, with enough effort, you'll succeed. This creates what Adler called a neurotic lifestyle, a pattern of behavior that continues to serve childhood goals even when those goals are no longer relevant or achievable. You keep choosing partners who are emotionally unavailable because your childhood taught you that love requires earning. That affection must be won through suffering. That relationships involve one person giving and another taking. The psychological hook goes even deeper. Toxic people often provide intermittent, reinforcement moments of kindness scattered between periods of neglect or cruelty. This creates what psychologists call a trauma bond. But Adler would frame it as your lifestyle being perfectly matched to someone else's. Their unpredictability triggers your hypervigilance. Their emotional unavailability activates your caretaking. Their criticism confirms your private logic about your unworthiness. You're not attracted to toxicity itself. You're attracted to the feeling of trying to earn love from someone who withholds it, because that dynamic feels like the most authentic form of love you've ever known. The struggle itself becomes confused with intimacy. Your family constellation taught you specific roles and rules about relationships that now operate outside your conscious awareness. If love felt conditional in childhood, unconditional love in adulthood feels foreign, suspicious, or boring. If chaos was the norm, peace feels uncomfortable. If your needs were consistently dismissed, having them honored feels overwhelming or undeserved. The invisible chains aren't just your patterns. They're your expectations, your comfort zone, your definition of what love looks and feels like. You keep attracting the same toxic person because, unconsciously, they're the only kind of person who feels like a real relationship to you. Let's establish something crucial. You are not broken, damaged, or destined to repeat these patterns forever. Your attraction to toxic people is not evidence of some fundamental flaw in your character, evidence of your incredible adaptability and your psyche's determination to heal. Every toxic relationship you've entered was your unconscious mind's attempt to resolve unfinished business from childhood. You weren't being self-destructive. You were being hopeful. Your psyche genuinely believed that if you could just love this person well enough, if you could just prove your worth convincingly enough, you would finally receive the love you needed all along. This is actually a testament to your resilience. Despite experiencing relationships that taught you love was conditional, chaotic, or painful, some part of you never stopped believing that real love was possible. You kept trying, kept hoping, kept opening your heart to the possibility of being truly seen and valued. Your pattern of choosing toxic partners is not a character defect, it's your trauma trying to heal itself. Your psyche is brilliant, but it's working with outdated information, still using the emotional GPS it developed in childhood. Even though you're now navigating an entirely different landscape, the roles you learned to play, the rescuer, the peacekeeper, the accommodator, the fixer weren't chosen freely. They were survival strategies you developed when you had no other options. You became who you needed to become to maintain connection with people who couldn't love you properly. And you did it so well that these roles became your identity. But here's what's truly beautiful about this realization. Recognizing that your patterns are rooted in childhood adaptations means you can choose something different now. You're no longer that powerless child who had to accept whatever love was available. You're an adult who can consciously decide what kind of love you want to accept and give. The invisible chains that bind you to toxic relationships are made of old beliefs, outdated roles, and childhood conclusions about your worth. These chains feel solid and permanent. But they're actually just thoughts that served a purpose once but no longer serve you now. You don't need to be ashamed of your patterns. You need to honor how hard you've been trying to create the love you never received. Every toxic relationship was your heart's attempt to go back and get it right this time. You weren't being foolish, shoo. We're being incredibly persistent in your pursuit of healing. The goal isn't to become someone who never gets hurt or never makes mistakes in relationships. The goal is to become someone who can recognize the difference between familiar and healthy, between chemistry and compatibility, between someone who triggers your trauma responses and someone who helps you heal them. This means learning to sit with the discomfort of healthy relationships, the strangeness of being with someone who doesn't need to be rescued, doesn't create drama, who shows up consistently. It means tolerating the unfamiliarity of being seen, valued, and cared for without having to earn it through suffering. Breaking free from these invisible chains requires you to grieve the love you never received, instead of continuing to seek it from people who coo and give it. It means accepting that you cannot heal your childhood wounds by recreating them with different people. The healing happens not by finding someone who will finally love you the way you needed to be loved then, but by learning to love yourself that way now. You've been trying to prove your worthiness to people who were never qualified to judge it in the first place. You've been seeking validation from people who lack the emotional capacity to truly see you. You've been trying to earn something that should have been freely given. The simple recognition that you are inherently worthy of love, respect, and kindness. The most radical thing you can do is to start believing that healthy love, without drama, without chaos, without conditions, is not only possible for you, but is exactly what you deserve. You don't have to earn your place in someone's heart. You don't have to prove your worth through suffering. You don't have to fix anyone to be worthy of being loved. The chains are invisible, but they're not unbreakable. They were forged in childhood and can be consciously dissolved in adulthood, one choice at a time. You keep attracting the same toxic person because you're still trying to win a game that was rigged from the start. The only way to break free is to stop playing and start believing that you deserve love that doesn't require you to bleed for it first.